if you think about a figure who just, I mean, completely dominated the Australian crime scene for a decade, you have to land on Tarek Zahed.
Oh, absolutely.
He blended this raw street violence with really high-stakes financial crime and somehow became a symbol of luxury brand defiance.
A walking symbol, yeah.
He wasn't just another criminal. He became a media phenomenon. I mean, they gave him these nicknames: the Balenciaga Bikie, the Gucci Gangster.
And that visibility, that's
Yeah.
exactly why his story is so important to look at. We're doing a deep dive today into the sources covering his life. He's this Lebanese-Australian outlaw biker who rose to become the national sergeant-at-arms of the Comanchero Motorcycle Club.
So our mission is really to unpack that whole dramatic timeline. We're tracing his path from his family's refugee origins and his own start in street violence, all the way through his rise as this top-tier enforcer, surviving just a catastrophic ambush, and then navigating a decade of these wild legal twists.
And his story is so much more than just a biography of a criminal. It's a lens. It's a way for us to view the systemic issues, the brutal cycles of retaliation, and the incredible risk that really defines Australia's outlaw biker culture.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's go right back to the beginning.
Right.
The sources sketch out a background that gives some interesting context for where he ended up. He was born in Sydney. His parents were Lebanese refugees who'd fled the Civil War.
Yeah, they were looking for safety, for stability, a fresh start in Australia.
But despite that, Zahed's own path veered into violence. And, I mean, remarkably early on.
Almost immediately. By the time he's in his mid-teens, he's already on the police radar for being, volatile and aggressive. His criminal foundation wasn't built on anything subtle.
Not at all.
It was just built on sheer blunt force.
Can you elaborate on that early pattern? Because the sources don't point to isolated incidents. It's more of an escalation.
That's right. His first convictions for common assault and resisting arrest, they go all the way back to the mid-1990s. But look how fast that aggression ramps up into something more calculated. By 2001, he gets an assault conviction from a road rage incident. And the chilling detail is that he used his dogs to attack a woman.
Wait, his dogs? He used them as a weapon?
That's a weapon, exactly.
Yeah.
It just shows a certain willingness to use any means necessary to inflict damage and, assert his dominance.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting worse. By 2004, another assault conviction. This time, the victim ends up with a fractured skull. So this consistent, escalating violence, it cements his reputation on the street long before he's formally part of any major group.
And I guess that reputation, that skill for enforcement, that's what leads him to the Comancheros by 2009, which is one of Australia's most feared and internationally known outlaw motorcycle clubs.
Yeah, he makes that transition from a street thug to being part of institutionalized organized crime. And crucially, he doesn't just stay a low-level member, he shoots up the ranks.
Right.
And eventually gets one of the most powerful and frankly feared positions in the whole club, National Sergeant-at-Arms.
So for anyone who might just think of these clubs based on, movies or TV shows, what does that title actually mean? What kind of power does the National Sergeant-at-Arms have?
This is so critical to understand. The Sergeant-at-Arms isn't just the muscle. He's the internal security chief. He's the one who coordinates enforcement. He's responsible for discipline across every state chapter.
So nationwide.
Nationwide. He vets new members, handles internal security. In a criminal organization built on drug trafficking and violence, the Sergeant-at-Arms is the one who enforces territory and deals with any perceived betrayal. He was, functionally, the head of enforcement for the entire enterprise.
Which demands absolute loyalty and, well, an extreme capacity for violence.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving from that foundation, let's look at the major convictions that really cemented his public image, the time he did in the early 2010s.
The attempted murder conviction in 2011 is defining. The sources paint this picture of just chaotic public danger. Zahed is firing bullets from a moving car.
A drive-by.
A drive-by shooting. He hits a man in the ear and shoulder, and he gets years behind bars for it. This wasn't a bar fight. This was a deliberate, high-stakes act of violence.
It really shows that duality, though. The readiness for that kind of deadly confrontation.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side. The sophisticated financial crime, which we see in that 2020 conviction for living off the proceeds of crime.
Right.
What was the tactic he was using there?
This really shows the calculated side of Tarek Zahed. He was systematically hiding huge amounts of cash, thousands and thousands of dollars, in bank accounts registered in his children's names.
His own kids. Why that specific method?
Well, it's a pretty calculated way to try and distance the money from himself, right? To avoid having the authorities seize it. If the funds are technically owned by his dependents, it just complicates the whole legal process.
So it's a layered approach.
Exactly. Extreme violence on one hand and complex financial schemes to protect the profits on the other.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does a figure with this violent criminal background, this enforcer, also become known for his high fashion sense? Where does the whole Balenciaga Bikie thing come from?
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it, of modern organized crime in Sydney. He actively cultivated this flashy style. He's constantly being photographed in unbelievably expensive designer clothes, Balenciaga, Gucci, you name it. He wasn't subtle.
Was that just a personal preference, or was it something more, a strategic display?
Oh, it was absolutely strategic. In that world, wealth and, showing it off, that's a signal.
Right.
Wearing a $5,000 designer jacket while you're the National Sergeant at Arms, that projects immense power, untouchability. It's a physical display of his criminal success. And of course, the media just ate it up.
And those nicknames just stuck?
They perfectly captured that bizarre clash between brutal organized crime and luxury fashion.
So his status is boosted by this visibility, but that same visibility has to come with a catastrophic cost in the underworld.
It becomes a marker. In a world of violent feuds, being that visible, that wealthy, a figure the media is always naming. You're not just a senior target. You become a symbolic one.
Which brings us to the most dramatic event of his life, the assassination attempt in May 2022. By then, the sources all confirmed Sydney was in the grip of this brutal, escalating gangland war.
Yeah, a feud that had already taken dozens of lives in New South Wales. It was an active war, and Zahed, with his rank and his profile, was right in the middle of it.
So tell us about the ambush itself.
He and his brother, Omar, had just finished a workout at a gym in Western Sydney. They were ambushed by gunmen who just opened fire, a ferocious hail of bullets. The attack was fast, it was coordinated, and it was absolutely lethal.
And his brother was killed.
Omar Zahed is killed instantly at the scene.
Zahed himself survived, but just how close did he come?
Gravely close. He was hit by multiple bullets all over his body. The injuries were devastating, severe internal damage, months of rehabilitation, and he was left with a permanent injury. The loss of vision in one eye.
What's fascinating here is how this event really brought home the reality of that underworld war for the public. I mean, this wasn't in some dark alley. This was a public gym in broad daylight.
It highlighted that there are no safe spaces. Your status, your security. It doesn't matter when that cycle of retaliation hits its peak. Even the National Sergeant at Arms, the enforcer, is just as exposed as anyone. And the consequences, they're not just borne by him, but by his whole family.
And despite barely surviving this, the legal system was waiting for him. Just months after pulling through, he gets arrested.
Yep. In August 2022, police wrap up this long-running cold case. They arrest Zahed on a busy Sydney street in this really high-profile operation. And again, his face, scarred but still defiant, is all over the news.
And the charges were huge. But they weren't for the shooting he just survived. They were for something else entirely.
Exactly. They were linked back to a 2014 case. He was charged with murder, kidnapping, and related offenses in the death of a 29-year-old named Yusuf Assoum, who'd been shot and stabbed 8 years earlier.
The police were making a statement.
A very clear one. Surviving a gang war doesn't give you a free pass on past crimes.
Given his history and the charges, I'm guessing bail was out of the question.
Completely. He was denied bail over and over. The authorities pointed to his resources, the same wealth that bought the designer clothes, and his criminal network. They argued he was a massive flight risk, so he was held, waiting for a murder trial.
Okay, and this is where the legal roller coaster takes this huge, almost unbelievable turn in 2024. What happens right before the trial starts?
The entire legal narrative just shatters. On the eve of the trial, the prosecutors make a dramatic move. They drop the main charges. The murder and the kidnapping counts are gone.
Gone. So what happened?
In exchange, Zahed pleaded guilty to a much, much lesser offense, hindering a homicide investigation.
That's a massive shift.
Yeah.
What does a plea deal like that tell you about the prosecution's case for murder?
It strongly suggests that. Well, that they were convinced he was involved, but the direct evidence to prove murder to a jury 8 years after the fact just wasn't strong enough.
So they took the certain conviction.
Exactly. The plea deal let them secure a conviction, get him to admit he obstructed justice, and close a cold case, rather than risk him walking free on all charges.
So what did he actually admit to doing back in 2014?
The offense was very specific. He confessed that he directed other people to get rid of a car that was involved in Assoum's death. And more broadly, he admitted he actively misled the police. His actions basically crippled the original investigation.
So when he's sentenced in March 2024, the judge has this balancing act, right? The seriousness of the crime versus the extreme physical trauma Zahed had just been through.
Yeah. He received a sentence of 3 years and 6 months with a non-parole period of 2 years and 4 months. And the judge did take those mitigating factors into account, the severe injuries, the long-term psychological trauma.
But they still had to come down hard on the obstruction itself.
Oh, absolutely. The judge was very clear. Even if the motive was loyalty to family or associates, his conduct was inexcusable. It actively buried critical evidence and made finding justice for Sognam's death significantly harder.
So by December 2024, he served that non-parole period and he's released. But his freedom was shockingly brief.
That's the most telling final chapter of this whole story. Despite the near-death experience, the recovery, the legal scrutiny, that cycle was just unbroken. His parole was revoked only a few months later in 2025.
What were the alleged breaches? Why was he suddenly described as being on the run?
2 big ones. First, an alleged assault down in Victoria. And second, and this is critical, he was associating with outlaw motorcycle gang members.
A direct violation of his parole.
A direct and immediate violation.
Right.
Those conditions were specifically designed to pull him away from that life, to limit his criminal contacts.
And he just shattered them. Where did they finally catch up with him?
He was found and arrested at an Airbnb in Sydney. And tellingly, when the police found him, they also found a significant amount of cash that they believed was tied to ongoing criminal activity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole arc from the Balenciaga Bikie persona to surviving an ambush, going through the legal system, and then immediately snapping back, it just shows the incredible gravitational pull of that world.
It demonstrates how difficult, maybe even impossible it is for figures at that level to ever truly leave. The loyalty, the reputation, the alliances, they define his entire existence. Not even a near-fatal attack or prison seems to provide an escape hatch from that cycle. His life is just this stark, public example of an underworld phantom trapped by the very status he built.
So Tarek Zahed really stands as this symbol of complexity. Our deep dive into the source material shows him as a cautionary tale of how status and wealth in the criminal world come at this immense and ultimately limiting personal cost. He's emblematic of the challenge Australia faces in breaking these cycles of violence.
He remains one of the most controversial figures in modern Australian crime. He's a convicted criminal, he's a survivor of an assassination attempt, and he is a constant, visible reminder that the allegiance to the club often supersedes any real attempt at a clean break.
So what does this all mean? The sources detail a life that is just constantly entangled with violence and the law, where reputation seems to matter more than freedom or even survival. And it raises a fundamental question for you to think about. What is the true cost of loyalty and reputation in the underworld? And does survival or prison ever really offer an escape from that self-perpetuating cycle?